So welcome to the Intercontinental Day of Action here in Washington State. We are one of over 50 actions happening right now across North America, called by our Mexican allies. Many people in Mexico lost their lives to keep NAFTA from passing 20 years ago. They knew, despite all the promises of economic stability and a better life, that their communities would suffer. They were right, and we were right. However, that's little consolation now after 20 years of job loss, environmental degradation, and erosion of our democracy. And there is a plan to expand NAFTA. It's called the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP. That is why we're here today. And we have folks from all over Washington here. We have folks from Olympia, folks from Spokane, folks from Bellingham, folks from Kitsap that have come here today to vow to make sure that we do everything we can to stop the expansion of NAFTA in the TPP. Are you with us? So I'm delighted to welcome up our first speaker. He was involved in the struggles against NAFTA and CAFTA and the WTO. He knows that one of the root causes of forced economic migration is because of the destabilization of NAFTA. Juan Bocanegra is the state coordinator of El Comité Pro Reforma Migratoria y Justicia Social, the Committee for Migration Reform and Social Justice. Let's welcome Boca to the stage.
Thank you, folks. And I decided to write my presentation and not shoot off the hip. So I think this is a really important issue for all of us. And like Kristen said, we were right 20 years ago. We were right all over the place. 20 years ago when labor, students, civil rights, immigrant rights groups, women, intellectuals, professionals, social justice, and ecumenical groups came together to protest the then effort to push the North American Free Trade Agreement down workers' throats. It has been 20 years, a process that has left not only an economic nightmare for workers, but also death and destruction for others. Since its implementation, a slow but consistent trickle of workers and indigenous people from Mexico have been displaced, with a culmination by the devaluation of the Mexican peso by banks like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and so on. To date, there are over 11 million undocumented workers in the United States whose suffering can only be attributed to those financial policies called trade agreements. You know them, they are Maria, Luz, Manuel, Raul, and so on. These hard-working people were displaced as NAFTA thrashed the domestic markets and the manufacturing infrastructure of Mexico. What has the process produced? Millions of people displaced from their native lands and the way of life. It has developed a more failed state with corrupt government called Mexico, running rampant unemployment and underemployment, where the largest employer for young peoples are the cartels. A country where life is considered cheap, exemplified through murders, kidnappings, arrests without due process, where cartels run large parts of the country under the full knowledge of the existing government, and in instances, in cooperation with some of these dark forces. We have seen riches beyond belief of a very few people at the cost of the massive many, where the whole public infrastructure like teléfonos, transportaciones, and the food production system was sold and continues to be sold like Pemex. We have seen the environment devastated along the border and in the interior of Mexico by these financial interests that have benefited by NAFTA. In this country, we have seen hundreds of thousands of jobs lost for domestic and immigrant workers as industries are sent abroad, where the salaries are super low, creating super exploitative conditions for workers in those countries. We have seen the standard of living deteriorate for workers and their families that have been fought by workers in the past. These have been costly lessons for workers. However, we must also point out that people have not sat by as these policies were implemented. We have also fought back. And what we have learned, that when we fight back, we win. The Zapatistas who came out to protest the devastating impact that the agriculture and other domestic policies would have on people's lives. This was not a passive demonstration. Workers, students, women, immigrants, minority communities demonstrated during the WTO. Seattle led the way worldwide against the so-called trade policies. We have seen the historical marches of millions of immigrants and movements in 2006. We have seen the development of the Occupy movement and the educational process that it has created by highlighting the power of the 99%. And now, the $15 wage increase, which continues to create ripples in politics.
Absolutely.
So the lesson we have learned is that when we fight, we win. That we need unity, that we cannot stop fighting back no matter what. That we will be victorious if we fight for our own interests. No to the trade agreements, no to the deportations. I-15 now. Let's support others and join us on May 1st for the Immigrant Rights March on May 1st. Thank you very much. Y la lucha continúa.
Thank you, Boca. Now I'd like to invite to the stage an intergenerational duo. We have Bobby Righi, retired instructor from Seattle Central Community College and a member of AFT. Today she represents the Puget Sound Advocates for Retirement Action Environmental Committee, and she will be sharing about NAFTA. And we also welcome to the stage Wren Wagenbach, a 13-year-old from Plant for the Planet, who will also be sharing her views about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Let's welcome them.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out. Well, I'm representing the Puget Sound Association for Retirement Action, and I'm here, I think, to give you the view of older folks who maybe been around long enough to know about the class war that the right wing likes to whine about is real. It's real because the rich cannot stop finding new ways to squeeze more profit out of us. And this trade agreement, and all these trade agreements, is just a new instrument. So we're supposed to stand by with this trade agreement which tries to pin us down so we can't do anything while we watch our grandchildren try to go to school and accumulate debt and face a planet that's being ripped by greed. And we're supposed to stand by and not do anything. But we are not going to shut up. So here we are, the 20th anniversary of NAFTA. Before NAFTA, trade agreements were about trade, oddly enough. And it was about, how much tariff were you going to charge? What were you going to allow into your country? What were you going to try to sell to other countries? And you made an agreement about that. NAFTA came along and it was 900 pages. And Congress passed it without reading it. So what have we got now? It's real. Nothing. Well, it's worse than nothing, actually. So despite all the talk, but how about this would be so good for the U.S., for Mexico, for Canada, we have the highest level of inequality we've had in this country in history. 90% of people in this country, working people, make less than half of the income every year. That's never happened before. This is not only because of NAFTA, it's all because of WTO and other trade deals. So you've already heard about Mexico, and more beautifully than I could begin to say it. But what has been the response to the U.S. to all that devastation in Mexico? We built a fence to keep out desperate people. That's been the response of the rulers of this country. So NAFTA gave rise to CAFTA, and the WTO came after, and other trade agreements. And these, as I said, are not about trade. They're about investor rights. They're about the right to get profit, despite what the people who live there want to protect. Do they want to protect the water, like in El Salvador under CAFTA? A mining company wants to mine for gold. and they want to mine it using arsenic, etc., etc. Well, farmers began to resist that, and they got the church to go along with them, and they got the government of El Salvador to take away the permit for mining. They are now facing a multi-million-dollar suit from this mining company called Pacific Rim, which has now been taken over by another mining company, because they're trying to protect the ability to grow food. And we also have other cases of protecting investor rights. Cargill, one of our favorite companies, Cargill and Arthur Daniels Midland, and another group called Corn Food, tried to get Mexico to stop taxing high fructose corn syrup. And Mexico is doing that to protect the sugarcane growers and also the health people. But they lost a suit for one company got $77 million, $37 million, and I think the other one was $58 million. So, and of course, you know already probably about the suit for mining. A gas company moved to the U.S. in order to sue the Canadian province of Quebec because they put a moratorium on fracking. Well, they're suing them to lift that moratorium. They were trying to protect the health of the people there. So all of this means they're going to extract the profit no matter what it does to our health, to our children, to the environment. But wait, where do they file these suits anyway? You been to court? It's at the World Bank, at a hearing place in the World Bank. The judges? 3 corporate lawyers who rotate in and out every 3 months. That's the kind of justice that these agreements bring to us. So I want to quote. I've tried to find something to quote from Pete Seeger. So I'm going to channel Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie in their song that says, "Some will rob you with a shotgun and some with a fountain pen. And today we're all being reamed, royally robbed by the ink on those treaties." So, and one last thing, today there are huge numbers of people in the Zocalo in Mexico City. Mexican farmers have blocked the borders several times this month, and they say they're not going home till NAFTA is till their government breaks with NAFTA, and we need to stand with them. Thank you.
My name is Wren Wagenbach, and I'm 13 years old. I'm working with Plant for the Planet, an organization run by children around the world that plants trees to help offset CO2 emissions. I'm here to speak out against the Trans-Pacific Partnership because I'm worried about my future. We know that man-made emissions of methane and CO2 are making our climate less stable. Climate scientists can't be sure exactly what will happen in the future, but we know some very scary outcomes are possible. Will I be able to live my life in a world anything like the one we have now? Will I want to have children 50 years from now? Will my children want to have children? Or will ocean acidification or water shortages or food shortages make their futures too uncertain to even risk having families? Climate change doesn't just affect us. It affects people who haven't even been born yet. Our political leaders are not doing a very good job of beginning to control climate change. We need to demand that they do better and to do more to reduce dangerous emissions. But the TPP will prevent that from happening. We can't let rules hidden in a trade agreement overturn the laws of democratic countries. We can't let the TPP prevent us from taking action to keep the world safe and comfortable for future generations. Please support Plant for the Planet, support 350.org, and oppose the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Wren and Bobby. When I say no more, you say NAFTAs. No more. NAFTAs. No more. NAFTAs. No more. NAFTAs. Well, we need to remember and we need to resist. We also need to have hope. I have some very, very good news for you. Because of the tireless actions of everyone here, and in particular our next 2 speakers, 2 days ago, Democratic Majority Leader Senator Harry Reid came out against fast track. This is pretty amazing, and it's because of the pressure of everyone here. And it is reason that if fast track does not move forward this congressional session, neither will the TPP. He's urged Congress not to pursue fast track. And so, at least if it does move forward, it will not be an up or down vote. And our two next speakers will tell you more about that. We are so lucky to have Lynne Dodson, who is Secretary-Treasurer of the Washington State Labor Council, and Robin Everett, who is Regional Organizer for the PSARA Club. And they are members of the Blue-Green Alliance. Let's welcome them to the stage.
All right, thank you, sisters and brothers. I'm Lynne Dodson, Secretary-Treasurer of the Washington State Labor Council, AFL-CIO. We represent over 400,000 union members in Washington State. Absolutely! And we are the watchdogs for all workers, whether they're in unions or not in unions. We work for our communities. We fight to create a better economy. And our concern reaches outside of our state, outside of our nation, to encompass the well-being of workers all over the world. And we know that standing together is the only way that we're going to create a world that puts people before profits. And we also believe in trade. We know that trade can work to benefit everyone. We know it's possible to have trade deals that create jobs, that fix the U.S. trade deficit, that include enforceable labor and environmental standards. Right. We know it's possible to have trade policies that advance the conditions of workers here and in other countries. We know it's possible to create trade policies that promote democracy. And we know that we can reach agreement, we can have policies that ensure countries have the ability to create and enforce strong labor standards and strong environmental standards. We know it's possible for trade deals to allow the distribution of medicine to where it's needed and can expand free speech. We know that these are possible. Fair trade is possible. But so far, none of these possibilities have been in our trade deals. Our trade policies since NAFTA have not lived up to the promise of improving lives of workers here and internationally. Instead, they've ballooned our trade deficit, hollowed out our manufacturing sector, pushed wages down, and enhanced the influence of the 1% over our economy. Millions of jobs are gone, communities have been devastated in the wake of closed factories, opportunities have been lost. And there's very little transparency. There is no transparency in the current negotiations on the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal. I'll call it a deal, not an agreement. The one thing we do know about this deal is that U.S. trade policy will continue to build multinational corporate power at the expense of workers everywhere. This deal is being negotiated in secret. Not in secret. Corporate lobbyists have access to the trade negotiations. These lobbyists have access to the particulars of the deal, but our own elected Congress people do not. According to the Constitution of the United States, Congress has exclusive authority over trade agreements. So how is it that Congress can't see the provisions of the TPP? How is it the only ones that are sure of the details are unelected corporate lobbyists? So our elected officials are kept, and the public are kept in the dark about the provisions, and now, through the Baucus-Hatch-Camp bill, they want to fast-track legislation. We're fortunate, very fortunate, to have heard from the Speaker that he's not supportive of fast-track, that it won't get through the Senate. We know, because we know that no trade deal, once it gets to fast track, has ever been defeated. The only time we can defeat a trade deal is before it gets to fast track. The Baucus-Hatch-Camp amendment, just like the fast track provisions in the past, has no formal process. that requires Congress or any other independent body to examine it to make sure that it'll have a positive impact on the U.S. No process to make sure that jobs will be created, not destroyed. No process to ensure that state and local governments can continue to protect their water, air, and other natural resources. No process to ensure that there's high labor standards. Congress doesn't get to ask questions about these crucial elements of a trade deal under fast track. They can only vote yes or no. The way the lobbyists write it, Congress can't debate changes or change the TPP. As AFL-CIO President Rick Trumka said the other day, fast track bills are out of date, poorly conceived, and bad for American workers. So on Monday, our Washington State Labor Council President, Jeff Johnson, sent a letter to our congressional delegation. We expressed our views on fast track and asked them for their commitment to vote against any fast track legislation. It's a simple request. Will you do your job on trade agreements, review the TPP, verify its impact on our economy, debate it, debate the TPP, the provisions, make sure it'll protect your constituents, amend what's wrong. My pages are out of order. We said in the letter, we want you, we need you to act as if we live in a democracy where the interests of the 99% are protected. And as Rich Trumka said, get off the corporate hamster wheel of trade. Do your job. So far, the response has been mixed. Our Republican delegation has already said that they'll support fast track. In our Democratic delegation, Congressman Jim McDermott has committed to opposing fast track. Our other congresspeople have not decided yet. They haven't said yes, but they haven't said no either. So sisters and brothers, it's time we went into beast mode. They need to hear from you. They need to hear from you every day. They need to hear that we don't want more of the same trade deals written by and for the 1%. They need to hear that we don't want trade deals that pit workers against each other in a mad race for profits for a few. You need to tell your congressmen and women that you don't want more failed trade policies like the TPP. You need to tell them that you are sick and tired of trade policies that do nothing more than shrink our paychecks and make it less likely that our children can climb the ladder of success. Our representatives need to do their jobs, not abdicate their responsibility and let multinational corporations determine our trade policies. We've seen how that works out. We can have trade policies that protect workers' rights, protect the environment, promote higher standards of living, and trade deals that promote democracy. America's workers want an open, democratic, accountable trade policy. We want these policies to include checks and balances on an administration's negotiation power. We reject fast track, and we reject any trade policies that fail to make the place a better world for workers, for the future, for our communities, and for our future. Thank you, sisters and brothers.
Hello, I'm Robin Everett with the Sierra Club, and Mr. Obama's so-called trade pact is nothing more than a corporate power grab, putting polluters' interests ahead of environmental rights. Out of the 29 chapters, only 5 are actually about trade. The rest refer to environmental, labor, intellectual property, and investor rights. This deal has been negotiated in complete secrecy, and the Sierra Club has not been included in the discussion. However, big polluters such as Halliburton, GE, Chevron, the National Coal Council, and the Nuclear Energy Institute are at that table. For the last 3 years, they have been allowed to secretly craft a trade deal that benefits them while we have been shut out of the process. However, thanks to WikiLeaks, the environmental chapter has been leaked, and what we found wasn't pretty. this chapter that's being negotiated under President Obama is actually worse than the environmental chapters that were negotiated under George W. Bush. That's not the change I believe in. The TPP allows rollbacks on illegally harvested timber, wildlife, and fish, while at the same time allowing foreign investors to sue us in private courts over our environmental laws. Additionally, the TPP would strip our government's power to manage U.S. gas exports, opening the floodgates for fracking, sacrificing our air, our water, all for the need for foreign markets. You guys heard from Plant for the Planet. They have committed to planting 1 million new trees to help combat climate change, while at the same time, our leaders are negotiating to massively chop down the Amazon rainforest. In President Obama's State of the Union address, he stated that climate change is real and that we must act. When future generations ask us if we did everything we could to halt climate change, he wants to say, yes, we did. Well, I'm here to say, no, we didn't. We have not even scratched the surface on what needs to be done to protect our planet and our children's future from catastrophic climate change. And in all of the above energy policy, combined with expansive trade deals designed to protect polluters' profits, prove that his commitment to fighting climate change is left wanting. The current state of the environmental chapter is completely unacceptable. It's unbelievable to think that we have allowed foreign corporations to attack the public interest policies and private trade tribunals, but we can't get an environmentally binding chapter with strong commitments to help protect natural resources. This goes against everything we are working so hard to gain. This goes against environmental protections, halting disastrous climate change, ending corporate personhood, getting money out of politics, raising our standard of living, and raising the minimum wage. I am here to tell Congress to reject Fast Track, and I hope that you do too.
Let's hear it for Robin and Lynne from the Blue-Green Alliance. So as we've heard, Monsanto, Cargill, big agribusiness are at the TPP table, laying out their plans to take over our food systems and force us to eat their GM pesticide-laden foods, poisoning our communities. However, the next speaker is the antidote to all of that. Reverend Robert Jeffrey is the senior pastor of New Hope Baptist Church and the founder of the Black Dollar Days Task Force, a not-for-profit committed to facilitating economic self-sufficiency for inner-city African Americans. The Black Dollar Days Task Force founded Clean Greens. They manage a 23-acre chemical-free farm in Duval, Washington, where they employ people from their community and produce healthy vegetables to sell at a low cost in our community. We welcome Robert Jeffrey to the stage.
Thank you. One of the major problems with NAFTA and subsequently with TPP is that it has provided fertile ground for agribusiness corporations to grow and to flourish by displacing millions of small Mexican farmers and millions of poor people across the world. They gobble up vast amounts of farmland and other land, creating stiff and unfair competition for farmers and ranchers in the United States. The result of agribusiness and corporate land grabs is the victimization of the Mexican farmers and other poor workers across this region, subjecting the farmers in Mexico to Monsanto-like product-producing practices, in addition to subjugating formerly independent farmers to the choice of living in squalid conditions of poverty wages on large plantations. When will we learn that putting the food supply, in addition to our environmental future, into the hands of people whose only concern is profit, even at the expense of community, is a morally bankrupt policy? These policies are bankrupt because they create by their design an invasive corporate welfare system that maintains and promotes the existing corporate model and mindset. Its design by its very nature impedes the natural evolutionary progression of civilization by forcing upon it a dominating corporate reality that is already destroying the world. In effect, what these policies do is to make permanent, through dominant expansion, an imperfect corporate system dependent on fossil fuel, worker exploitation, and genetic earth-altering engineering. If there is to be global economic dialogue, let it begin from the bottom up, not from the top down. Corporate-controlled governments do not speak for the hopes and dreams of the masses of people that are affected by these policies. The people must be allowed to speak directly to each other. Small farmers must unite with other small farmers and create international farm collectives that can assure food security. Industrial workers must unite and create international workers' unions that can prevent the continued exploitation of workers. We need to develop community-based financial development agencies that will become community-based international monetary funds that can fuel the development of international small business opportunities. As Dr. King Jr. reminded us, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us, change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through the continuous struggle of the people. And so we must straighten our backs and work for our freedom. A man, he states, can't ride you unless your back is already bent. Today, our collective backs have become bent by relying on political systems that are already bought and paid for by both the money of the rich and the judicial cowardice of those sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. It is bent by the force of international police states that pretend to be democracies. It is bent by the magnitude and scope of what is being done both to the world and its environment and its citizens. Our backs are being bent by illegal corporate wars that leave many paralyzed by the pseudo-patriotic rantings of those who use legitimate despair as a means of increasing their corporate political power and wealth. Nevertheless, it is up to the people of goodwill, those who still believe in the moral imperative of justice for all, to take up the quarrel with the foe. The torch of generations of men and women who have fought and died for economic and social justice, for collective bargaining, for community-based food sovereignty, for the preservation of our environment is now in our hands. Let us not break faith with this great endeavor.
Thank you, Reverend Jeffrey. So continuing off of that, to remind you, we are joining people across Canada, including communities in Calgary, Kitchener, Red Deer, and Saskatoon. We are also joining communities across the U.S. today: Allentown, Pennsylvania; Fresno, California; Poughkeepsie, New York; Salt Lake City; Vegas; Jersey City, and I'm only naming a few. I'd like to invite Marianne Mercer to the stage right now. Those of you might think the labor movement has been the biggest resistor of the TPP or the environmental movement. However, globally, the global health movement have been the biggest resistors to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And we are so, so fortunate to have our next speaker to explain why global health advocates around the world are actively organized against the TPP. Marianne Mercer is on the faculty of the Department of Global Health at the University of Washington, and she's also the Senior Advisor for the Health Alliance International, which is a not-for-profit public health group. Let's welcome Marianne Mercer.
Thank you, Kristen. It's great to see everybody here today. I think, like you, I'm here to publicly show my opposition to the TPP and to this fast-track bill that would allow the TPP to be rammed through without our input, without anybody's input, except those of the big corporations. My field of work is public health, as Kristen said. Keep backing. And the likely effects of TPP on our health have me very, very worried. Me and many other global health people around the world. I'll give you a couple of examples, specific examples, but actually everything that's been said so far today is going to have a public health effect. The environment, labor rights, income inequality, Those are all public health effects. So how do we know what kind of public health effects to expect? Well, one thing we can certainly predict from what's happened to previous trade agreements. We've heard about NAFTA. We can be quite sure that the TPP is going to be at least as bad, and in many areas much worse. So just two examples. One is in the area of tobacco control. So think about tobacco. Tobacco is a product that when used normally, tobacco is a product that when used normally kills 6 million people around the world every year. 6 million people every year die as a result of tobacco, and about 1,200 a day in the US. So it is a huge public health threat. But even though it's a lethal product, trade agreements up till now, ones we've already heard about, are being used to prevent sovereign countries from controlling the marketing of tobacco in their own environments, such as by preventing advertising on packages, preventing advertising in different places, by deliberately advertising to kids, children who are, of course, this vast new market that will go well into the future. So TPP would allow these tobacco companies to get younger and younger and more people addicted to tobacco. And of course, tobacco use today is rising in the developing countries. We may have gotten some lower rates here, at least temporarily, but it's getting higher in basically most of the poor countries of the world. So at the price of millions and millions more deaths, TPP will be allowed to treat tobacco like any other product. It's not fair, and it shouldn't happen. But we also know what's in TPP from the WikiLeaks, particularly that intellectual property chapter, and we know some very specific threats to public health from that chapter. One example, if TPP is passed, it will seriously limit access to affordable generic drugs here around the world. The US is proposing that we let pharmaceutical companies extend their patents. We already know it's 20 years for a patent already. They'll be allowed to extend it for trivial reasons well beyond that 20 years. And 20 years is already too long because, as you know, the drugs that are patented are extremely high priced compared to the simple cost of producing them, which generic drugs reflect. It has other provisions that will restrict access to life-saving drugs like those for AIDS treatment, those for cancer treatment, the newer drugs for cancer treatment. And these, remember, are for people who can barely even afford generic drugs. We all buy medicines, and we would all be affected. But again, the people in the countries with the fewest resources are going to have the greatest public health effects from the TPP. So I'm very worried about the TPP. I hope you are too. I think you are. It sounds like it. So let's everybody that we know hear about it. No to TPP and no to fast track.
Thank you for your leadership. So we say there are 600 corporations negotiating the TPP, and we list them: Bank of America, Monsanto, Walmart. We know they care about their profits and their shareholders and very little about their workers. In trade justice, we're allied with workers around the world. We also need to remember that we don't have to look outside of our communities to see how these corporations treat their workers, because these workers are our neighbors. They are our family. They are us. I would like to invite to the stage Gerry Paladan. He is an OurWalmart leader in our organization, United for Respect at Walmart. Gerry also comes from the Philippines, so he knows firsthand the negative economic impact of bad trade deals. Let's welcome Gerry Paladan.
Good afternoon to everybody. You know Walmart, right? Walmart is the multi-billion-dollar company in the world. So don't share this money. Am I right? Okay, my name is Gerry Paladan. I worked to Walmart for 7 years. I work hard and I dedicated myself above and beyond. While I was working for those years, I found out that Walmart don't treat their employer right. So I'm thinking myself, this is not right. There's got to be something that I can do. One night, somebody knocking my door. I opened my front door. His guy's name's Kenny. I let him open. And we're talking about the OurWalmart organization. I didn't think of a second thought. I decided to join the OurWalmart organization because I know that this organization will protect me. From there, I went to management and I complain about the way how the equipment they're using are not safety. The Walmart management doesn't like employees to complain a lot. From then on, management start harassing me and bullying me all the time. I decided to file a complaint to Walmart for unfair labor practice. Now, I want that case. I continuing to fight to Walmart because I'm concerned to 1.3 million workers around the world. If we change Walmart, we change the world. In case you guys, you don't know, 500,000 workers that Walmart was claiming poached them. Our community are affected because we are the one that paying taxes. Why do you think Walmart's doing this kind of wrong policy? Like what happened in the factory of the Bangladesh. This building collapsed and fire. And it's too many people die, but Walmart denied it because this is not responsibilities. They are the biggest. Bangladesh is they are the biggest suppliers in the Walmart, but Walmart do not really care about the workers. In United States, I am bothered about this because it's controlling over the world. Walmart inspired me last June because I'm strong attacking to Walmart inside place to my war. And Walmart gave me a restraining order. I can step up to any Walmart all over United States. It is not right to Walmart control that. That's why I need you guys' help. I can do that by myself. I need your help to change the world because Walmart is the biggest company in the world and it's controlling the world. It is not right. And thank you so much for having me this opportunity. And good afternoon to everybody.
Thank you, Gerry. I'll share something I learned from Gerry and the OurWalmart workers. When I say stand up, you say live better. Stand up. Live better. Stand up. Live better. Stand up. Live better. Thank you. Thank you, Gerry, for your bravery, leading the way for all of us. Now I'd like to bring to the stage, unfortunately, Shama Sawant, City Council member, was not able to be here. However, she sent Teddy Shibabaw to share with us some of her thoughts on today's Intercontinental Day of Action. Thanks for being here.
Thanks everybody for being here. I just want to say a little bit that, this has already been said a little bit by the speakers, but we know that TPP and all the other so-called free trade agreements have nothing to do with freedom or trade, but are about securing the global dominance of U.S. corporate power and profits, and have nothing to do with benefits for workers and the poor and ordinary people either here or in the trading partners. when the political servants of big business were pushing NAFTA and all the other trade agreements since then, they promised us it would bring jobs and better living standards, but we know it's the opposite that has taken place. They forgot to tell us that the free in free trade meant the freedom for the 1% to reap profits at the expense of good-paying jobs, freedom for them to reap profits at the expense of poor farmers and local economies in the neo-colonial countries, freedom for them to reap profits at the expense of real democracy for the 99%. Now, there's been a lot of commentary on the fact that these negotiations are secret. One side of this that we may not have recognized that should give us hope is the fact that these negotiations, or rather the imperial strong-arming that is going on in extreme secrecy, this represents the fear of the capitalist ruling class that if ordinary people really knew what was happening, that it would cause a mass protest movement that could derail the deal. It should give us confidence in our power that they are scared of us. They figure with our consciousness of the fact that so many other attacks are happening on our living standards, when corporate ruling elites are awash in cash, in reserves that they're not investing in the economy, when the stock market is at historic highs, all this that's happening at the same time as poverty is rising, that the majority of workers, the majority of people receiving food stamps in the United States are actually working Americans, that the official, the full real unemployment rate is something in north of 30%, that all of this is happening at the same time as Wall Street and corporations are benefiting from our misery. That if the dirty details of the TPP were really exposed while all of this was happening, that it would cause, that they're afraid that this would cause a social explosion. And for us, we should see the TPP not just as a problem on its own, or free trade as a problem on its own, but as a symptom of a diseased system known as capitalism, which has failed to 99%, and it's time that we fought for an alternative, a democratic socialist alternative. The good news is that we don't always have to play defense when it comes to fighting for our living standards. The momentous fight for a $15 an hour minimum wage in Seattle and nationwide gives us an enormous opportunity to make an offensive for our rights and for our living standards. There's enormous momentum right now in the fight for 15 now. With fast food workers' strikes, the CTAC initiative for 15 passing, and the election of Shama Sawant as a socialist alternative candidate fighting for a $15 an hour minimum wage should give us enormous confidence that we can actually win this fight. Because of this momentum, we've seen politicians across the country, from the president on down, falling over themselves as to who's fighting for a higher minimum wage and whatnot. And we should say that the ridiculous figures of $10.10 or otherwise are not what a living wage is, and we should be fighting for a $15 an hour minimum wage. But in order to actually make this happen, we need masses of people to get involved. We need people to organize in their neighborhoods. We need people to organize protests, educate each other about the issues, and to organize. And that if we actually win this fight for $15 an hour, which I have enormous confidence that we can, it will actually weaken the confidence of the ruling class, the capitalists in Wall Street, to bring down other attacks on us, and it will strengthen our side. So I urge everyone to sign up at 15now.org to get involved in the campaign, and I urge you to come to an event on February 15, which will be a day of organizing, education, and music. It'll be on Saturday, February 15th at 2 p.m. at the SEIU 775 headquarters, which is 215 Columbia Street. So that's the event. You can pick up more flyers for the event at the Socialist Alternative table back there.
Thank you. All our movements are connected indeed. We now have the really great pleasure of having an amazing cultural worker with us. She's a singer, she's a songwriter, she's an activist. She's here on her lunch break to share her inspirational words in music. Please welcome Kaeley Pruitt-Hamm.
Thank you to everybody who put so much work into organizing this. This needed to happen. So I'm here because the TPP would affect everybody. I don't care what issue you care about the most, whether it's getting the healthy food you need at a price that you can afford, getting the medications you need to survive or your children need to survive at a fair price, or whether you want good jobs here in the US or abroad. It's going to affect all of us. So I had a dream that with these kinds of protests where it's just about boring economics, that people would come out from their offices in their business suits. My dad's here in his business suit. And I am wearing Seahawks gear today. As if anyone knows me, you know that I'm a huge football player. I'm just a huge football player. Yeah, by my size. I'm not into football, but that's... So anyway, if I put it in those terms, so because Seahawks is on everyone's mind, if the TPP passed, it would be as if the referee was living with the Broncos coach and players, and then decided that if ever we should have good defense and keep them from getting a touchdown, then they would be able to sue the taxpayers. So if the TPP passes, it will put more power into the hands of the already powerful, all too powerful corporations. Thank you. And so we need people power. So I need your help. We all need each other's help. When I am singing, we need, you all sing, people power. Wanna practice? We need people power. Yeah, all right, so you'll know when that comes. I used to think free trade was free. I thought, oh, how bad could it be? It only will increase prosperity. I used to think free trade was free. I used to think free trade was free.
Thank you so much, Kaeley, for your stunningly beautiful inspiration. Woo! All right. So, this morning, there were actions happening all over Washington State, letting our elected officials know we need them to be strong, represent us, and vote no on Fast Track. I am so honored to invite Backbone Campaign with activists from Bellingham, Kitsap, Spokane, Olympia, and Seattle to tell us what happened.
Here they come! Come on, troops! Let's do this thing! All right. So, about 11 years ago, the Backbone Campaign started on Vashon Island, and we were giving backbones to Democrats and such. We really gave up on that pretty quick once we realized, it's actually we the people who have to have a backbone. About 20 years ago, I was climbing a tree, and I was up at the top of the tree, and it was so beautiful, the canopy rolling, and the birds hopping from treetop to treetop. And I was looking out there, and I was thinking, God, it's so beautiful. Creation is so beautiful. And then I'm up there at this natural being. I'm like, hey, we're beautiful too. We're part of this. And then I was heading back down the tree and a branch broke. Oh, geez, and I fall 60 feet thinking this could be it. Bam, hit the ground. And I was like, wow, I'm alive. My arms aren't broken. My legs aren't broken. And I thought, well, okay, then I'll get up. So I tried to get up. And then I discovered that the idea of getting up was not enough. I had shattered 3 vertebrae, and I couldn't move the idea into my body. So the idea of having a backbone is the idea of moving values and vision and ideas and our dreams and our aspirations forward by building a movement. And so Backbone Campaign is about building social movement that is powerful enough to fight the powers of fear with love, the powers of commodification of everything else, with the sacredness of life, community, and the planet. And only a bought and sold government would sacrifice sovereignty and our capacity to pass laws to defend communities, human rights, and democracy itself for the benefit of future profits. A reaction to the TPP, or Fast Track, appropriate reaction is not, I'm going to vote against you next season election. Boring. An appropriate and proportionate response is a nonviolent citizen rebellion. We cannot shy away from these moments. And these are your frontline troops, ready to hit the road with peace and love in their hearts, but mighty strong. So let's hear from them what they did today. How about Olympia? A word from Olympia. This is Rod Tharp from Olympia.
Right, we were represented by South Sound Rising Tide. The Olympia FOR Confront the Climate Crisis, and of course, Backbone Campaign. We went into our representative's office, Dennis Heck, who's actually a new representative, but he hasn't come out with a very firm statement one way or the other on the TPP. So we tried to convince him that he needed to stand up for the workers, for the environment, and for democracy, and that if he were to vote for fast tracking, he'd be voting for the corpocracy instead of democracy. So 13 of us went in there and did a flash mob, which hopefully we'll get on. We had Grim Reapers. We had a picture of Dennis Heck on a stick that one of the guys stood with that. And interesting enough, his staff member asked if he could have it afterwards. So we gave it to him, and anything else? There's 5 of the 13 of us here.
Hi. Occupy Bellingham has been fighting the corporate coup d'etat for the past about 12 months. We have had numerous presentations for community members. We've done presentations at Western Washington University about TPP. We've had articles in the local paper. We have had letter writing campaigns. We stand out on the street passing out banners. We've been working tirelessly. We hosted a backbone action training, forgot about that. We've done everything we can think of. And this morning we went to Rick Larson's office and presented him with a letter with all the reasons why we think TPP is a bad idea. And we told him, vote no on fast track.
Our freshman congressman in the Kitsap, Pierce County areas is Derek Kilmer. He took the place of the previous quasi-corporate Congressman Norm Dix. I supported Kilmer vigorously. I campaigned, I volunteered at events, I donated, I phone banked, and I supported him vigorously. He has since disappointed me, and I have been struggling with him for a couple of months now on TPP and fast track, getting some fairly vigorous words in with he and his staff. So this morning, my wife Valerie and Marilyn Kimmerling here went down to his Tacoma office, and I had a backbone campaign spineless citation with me. I had put it in a nice plastic display case, and of course with me on behalf, I only had to politely leave a brief. So I went into the office with them and said, I'd like to present you with this document today. And so Willow is there and Leah is there, and they have these little smiley faces. Oh yay, Catherine's not going to yell at us today. And so I said, this is a spineless citation. This is for Derek's spinelessness in not opposing the fast track legislation. And the little smiley faces got kind of frowny faces. And so they have it. I hope they give it to Derek. He deserves it.
Hi, Susan Delbene is my rep, and we have had numerous civilized meetings at her office, and we've talked to 3 or 4 of her reps or her people, but we've never gotten to talk to her. So this morning, a number of us went in and we handed her a provisional thank you card for if she will stand with Harry Reid and vote no, because we're giving her the benefit of the doubt, because she won't commit one way or the other. But we also regretfully had to give her a provisional spineless citation because she refuses, she has not signed the Delario Miller letter to President Obama to stop fast track. So we felt heard. I think her staff members are more with us than maybe she is. So hopefully they were very receptive. They liked our show, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
I'm from Mount Lake Terrace in Snohomish County, way up there. And I want to thank and give a shout out to the Bellingham folks for sticking it to Rick Larson. Thank you, because he's my rep now too. So.
Spokane!
So how many, there are like 8 of us from Spokane? Yeah. Oh, and then Shadow makes 9. Nice. Yeah. So we're here from Occupy Spokane, from Spokane Moves to Amend the Constitution, from Spokane Peace and Justice Action League, from the Oak Tree, and we've actually been working on this issue for almost 2 years because one of our local people followed it before it ever hit the media. We have monthly conversations with Patty Murray's office, with Maria Cantwell's office, with Kathy McMorris Rogers' office, and
And we told them about TPP before any of them knew about it. So we have been working on this for 2 years, and we are making progress. They are starting to listen. So we've had educational events, we've had rallies, we've had marches, and we absolutely need to make sure that we stop fast track and that we stop TPP, because all the rest of our work on social justice won't matter anymore if TPP passes. So, go, fight, win.
All right, so my name's Eric, I work with Backbone Campaign, and these are all my friends, and so are you. Our movement is building. So this morning, my friends and I, members of the Backbone Patrol, paid a visit to Representative Reichart's office. Yeah, Representative Reichardt is the chairman of the Friends of the TPP caucus. So we delivered a spineless citation because a friend of the TPP is a foe of the people. But this wouldn't be complete without a thank you. McDermott has taken a position to oppose fast track and oppose the TPP, and so he deserves a thank you card here. Thanks for standing strong against the TPP fast track train wreck. Yeah. And I also think that all these activists deserve a spine thank you for standing up for social justice, for workers, for the environment. Thank you.
And thank you to our artists who provide us incredible visuals to make our movement not just powerful and fierce, but also beautiful. Thank you all, and thank you for the organizers.
Thank you all for coming.
All right, so now it's important that we build on all the actions that these wonderful activists have started today. There are informational flyers going around. Does someone have a flyer? Can someone show me a flyer? I know. Is there a flyer? There are flyers. Okay, great. So we need, before you leave today, we need you to take a flyer and it has the telephone numbers of all your elected officials. And we need you to promise today you will, got it. We need you to promise today that you will call your elected leaders and you will say, have a backbone. Pledge to vote no on fast track. How many will do that? Can I hear you? All right, so we are absolutely a movement today, and we are joined by many groups that are exciting, and I want to do a few shout outs. So we have WAMEND in the house today, and they are launching right here, right now, their I-1329. And this is their amend the Constitution to get corporate power out of politics and to overturn Citizens United. So before you leave today, you need to sign one of the petitions and find out how you can help them. Also today, probably already announced, the White House is releasing their environmental assessment of the XL pipeline. And we hear that it's going to be bad. So 350.org is having an event on Monday nights. They don't know the details yet, but you must go to their website, which is 350seattle.org, because we cannot let the XL pipeline go forward. Right. So please, there are many, many arms to our movements. We want to thank the Sierra Club for their support in helping us out with this space, the Washington State Labor Council for helping to amplify our sound, all of our amazing activists from Spokane, Olympia, Kitsap, Port Orchard, Seattle. I want to especially thank the sponsors of this event, the Community Alliance for Global Justice, 350.org, Occupy Bellingham, WAMEND, Expose the TPP, the Washington Fair Trade Coalition, Northwest Stage, our fabulous speakers. Special shout out to Kaeley Pruitt-Hamm. And we adore the flying members of the Labor Chorus. And they are going to, I love that, but they have a little moniker. And they are going to conclude our wonderful event today by leading us all in song. So take it away, Flying Squad members.
This one is on. All right, well, let's go out of here on a high note, and we got a chorus for you to sing, and we got a song. There's so many good things that have been said about the about why we don't like the TPP. So this song kind of summarizes all of that and gives you a chorus to sing. Well, if you want to get wise, open up your eyes, stick out your ears and listen. If you don't feel the heat, then I must repeat, there's something you've been missing. The newspaper today said everything's okay. Well, that's just hopeful dreaming and idle wishing. 'Cause if you take the time to read between the lines, you'll find friction in the system. Just a little friction in the system. And I am believing it's you and me and the rest of the folks in town. We got a government we cannot depend on. That's more than conviction. And we are married up and we'll call their bluff. We're making friction in the system. Okay, so next time I expect all of you to sing that chorus. Stick out your ears and you will hear the gears. They're grinding if you listen. Oh, well-oiled machine runs smooth and clean, but there's something wrong with this one. When 1% of American households owns about 40% of the wealth, it's our conviction. Some things have got to change, so we're gonna arrange a little friction in the system. Just a little friction in the system. And I am believing it's you and me and the rest of the folks in town. We got a government we cannot depend on. That's more fact than fiction. And we are mad enough that we'll call their bluff. We're making friction in the system. Yeah, you can dance, that's quite all right. The multinational corporations say with free trade we must have rules. Give up your sovereignty so trade can be free. Well, do they think that we are fools? We've got NAFTA and GATT, and what's more than that, they came here with the WTO. That was the big one. But we organized and they got us surprised and had to leave town on the run. Because we made a little friction in the system. And I am believing it's you and me and the rest of the folks in town. We got a government we cannot depend on. That's more fact than fiction. And we're mad enough that we'll call their bluff. We're making friction in the system. Well, now they're at it again. Looks like they'll never stop. This time it's the TPP. That's the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal. Not a good deal for you and me. Eliminates the sovereignty of every nation and puts control in the hands of our corporate master. We got to stop this coup. It's up to me and you till we get rid of these corporate bastards. You knew that was coming, right? So let's make a little friction in the system. We're gonna turn it around, and I am believing it's you and me and the rest of the folks in town.